Hello, everyone. So, this week I decided to research the clinical chemistry of neonatal medicine. So, like I've said before, neonatal medicine is something that's really interesting to me. So, I thought this would be a really good topic for my research week. So, the focus of my research was mainly on some of the tests that are done in a clinical setting to evaluate the health of a neonate. And then I also focused a little bit on SIDS as well, just because I noticed that there was some promising research going on, and I thought it would be good to include it. So, just to kind of sum up my introduction, the scientific community right now knows a lot about embryonic development, neonatal development, and prevalent diseases for infants. We've come a really long way, and there's a lot that we understand that we did not in the past. For example, infants born at 24 weeks are able to survive and grow to healthy, normal children because we have all of this new technology in medicine that we didn't have years ago. One of my best friends was actually born 3 months early, so kind of around that time, and now she's a dance major in New York City, so babies that once would not have been able to survive born that early now can have really incredible lives. So I think that's just something that's so exciting, and so happy for many people that we have all these possibilities now and that it's just continuing to improve. So many diseases and complications that were once fatal can now be quickly recognized and treated. As I just said, there's a lot that we can do now that we couldn't then, and we do kind of start tests during pregnancy and then immediately after birth with an APGAR test, and then there are a whole bunch of other things that you do during the first year, not just vaccinations, but tests to evaluate the health of lungs and the circulatory system and just really all kinds of things, and I'll kind of go into that next. So there are all these tests now, but we still have to remember that there are many things to be researched further, and I'll kind of touch on that with SIDS, as you'll see in a bit. So some of the clinical testing I focused on was body weight measurements, and essentially this is just weighing a neonate at every checkup to make sure that they are continuing to gain weight and that they are being properly nourished. If perhaps breastfeeding isn't quite working for the infant and they're not able to get enough nutrients, that could potentially be a problem, because that means they would be behind on development and they'll be malnourished, and that is not good. So that's one of the things that they do to monitor health. And then neonates in general, they're just very new humans, and there's a lot that they're still working on developing. They have less mature enzyme systems and less ability to bind proteins. So there are certain things like immature renal function and hyperbilirubinemia that mean that they might have some problems with that, and this can be evaluated through urine analysis or serum testing. So that's just kind of one of the things they'll check. Sometimes infants can have problems with breathing, especially premature babies, since their lungs are not quite as developed. So blood gas monitoring is used to evaluate oxygenation, ventilation, acid-base status, and then also hemoglobin. Hepatic damage, so like liver damage, can be evaluated through hyperbilirubinemia and then cholestasis. And then one of the things that my research really emphasized, which I hadn't thought about that much before, was the excessive blood loss from testing. So babies are obviously much smaller than humans. They have less blood to give, but we are testing all these different things and extracting blood for that. So this research wanted to emphasize that you have to be really mindful when you are taking these tests, that you're only taking the smallest amount of blood that you need, and that you're not overwhelming the system of this tiny little human. So, moving on to SIDS. So little is known about SIDS compared to some of the other prevalent diseases for neonates. We are still not entirely sure of the exact way it's caused. We don't really have a cure for it. What we really tell parents is practice safe sleep habits. No blankets, no pillows, no stuffed animals in the crib. So we kind of eliminate the potential for overheating, and we ensure that nothing will suffocate the baby. And just in general, we try to recommend that babies sleep flat on their back in a crib, not co-sleeping, because that could potentially cause problems. What's really safest is for a baby just to sleep on their own in a crib with nothing that could potentially block their airway or let them get overheated. And just to be extra cautious, some parents even buy heart rate monitors just to make sure that their baby's heart is still beating okay and that they're still doing all right. And the forms of research that I found being conducted on SIDS I thought were really interesting. There was one that focused on neurochemicals that contribute to brainstem dysfunction and insufficient oxygen during sleep. And this is something that they are working on developing. They were experimenting with mice, so obviously it's not entirely formed yet, but it's definitely a theory that seems like it could be promising. And then there's also carbon monoxide buildup and inner ear damage. So this is another form of research that has to do with SIDS, and the idea behind that is that this buildup and the inner ear damage is correlated to suppression of arousal movements during sleep, and that's something that's really important for the SIDS infant. Is perhaps a baby that died of SIDS kind of like stopped breathing in their sleep, they stopped moving. So if infants are able to still have those arousal movements during sleep and kind of check that they're still breathing and that they're still doing okay, then that would make them a little bit safer. So both of these forms of research are still being developed. They're not solidified by any means, but I thought they were really interesting and I thought they were promising, and I really hope that we continue to learn a lot about SIDS. It's, I believe, one of the third leading causes of infant death in the U.S., and there are, of course, other things that can happen to infants, but this is one that is really scary and it's really sudden. You could put your baby to bed one night and then the next morning they just don't wake up, and that's terrifying to parents and really just to anyone to think that your baby's okay and then all of a sudden they're not. One of my friends back in middle school actually had a sister who died of this, so this is not just a rare occasion. Like it happens to too many people. It's really sad, and I really hope that someday soon we'll be able to treat it even better. So kind of in conclusion, there are many tests that are done evaluating levels of chemicals, evaluating organ function, those kinds of things in neonates, just to ensure that they are developing properly and that all their potential health concerns are being addressed by doctors. SIDS is not as well understood as some of the other prevalent diseases for neonates, but there is research being done, and hopefully we just continue to make progress in neonatal medicine, and I think there's a lot left for us to learn, but I think we've already made it a really long way. So thank you for listening.